My partner's keeping it real. What's happening, everyone? And welcome to Al Chile Boxing Talk. The band is back together. We got Nopal Boxianos in the house, Run PMC, and Sean Gringo Hicks enjoying that sun in Texas, man. We're all jealous here in Northern California, brother. So, hey, dude, let's get talking, man. There's a lot of shit to catch up on, and I hope you all had a great holiday. And one of the things that we were talking about just in our group text was our go-to fights during the holidays, man. It's a great pleasure to kind of go through everything and just kind of see which ones we like going through. So I just kind of wanted to bring it around, and talk about our favorites. Run PMC during the holidays, man. Like, which fights do you like to throw on?
Yep, most definitely have three during the holidays. Since it's usually a little bit slow with boxing, I like watching the action fights. So I have three of them. These are my top three. I can watch them any time of the year, but especially during the holidays. Number one being Andre Berto versus Victor Ortiz, number one. Number two being Alfredo Angulo versus James Kirkland. And the last one, which is the one we actually rescored here, was Timothy Bradley versus Ruslan Provodnikov. I feel like all those fights, definitely the first two smaller stakes. I mean, the big stakes for Ortiz being he fought Floyd Mayweather after that. But then the Bradley Provodnikov really, Bradley could have been, in the eyes of the general public, a one-hit wonder after he beat Pacquiao if he lost to Provodnikov. So, but those are definitely my three favorite fights.
Damn, bro. Those are some good ones. And so I take it you were rooting for the winner and all of those that you watched?
Honestly, I was sort of in the Angulo Kirkland. I wasn't really. I was just seeing what was going to happen. I didn't think really much of it. I thought, honestly, Kirkland was coming back after he lost to Ishida. He had those three comeback fights. And I didn't really. I thought, and then especially when he got knocked down, I'm like, oh, Angulo's going to close this. I was rooting for Bradley, and I was rooting for Ortiz. So two of the three, I was rooting for the eventual winner.
Dude, I love both. I love all three of those fights, actually. But, I did that rescore with you, so I've just seen the Bradley Provodnikov one recently. But I got to go back and watch those other ones for fun, man. It has been a couple years, bro. So thank you for the recommendation. I'm still on vacation here in California. You know what I mean? So I might have to pop that one in later tonight when I'm working on I got a puzzle going, 1,000-piece puzzle.
Man, if you watch the Berto Ortiz, I think D-Style had that as his fight of the decade. I think it was when he did the end of the year awards in 2020, and that's one of my favorite fights of like at least modern time. And then the Angulo Kirkland, maybe not as much back and forth, but just a brutal fight.
Oh man, dude, those are some good fights. Sean Gringo Hicks, man, welcome back, brother. Tell us, man, like, what do you like to watch during the holidays, bro?
Oh man, definitely during the holidays, and great to be on with my brothers here from Chile, keeping it out Chile with you guys, enjoying that Texas sun. But what I enjoy, not just during the holidays, but year round, honestly, just anytime there's like a slow season during boxing and there's not really fights, or just to kind of pick my mood up, you got to go old school. I go with the War, Hagler Hearns. Doesn't take long, it makes you feel real good. Wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. I love that one, the action. There was true hate going into that fight. Hearns was talking a lot of smack, and Hagler's not the one to talk smack to. Hagler wanted all the smoke. Rest in peace to him. And just an amazing fighter. And an amazing fight, man. Just one of the most brutal fights of all and, just unbelievable. And then after that, another fight with a lot of brotherly love shared is Guerrero Morales 1. I like seeing that fight. Amazing trilogy. My personal favorite trilogy of all times. And just the different style, technique, the in and out, and then how their, relationship has totally done a 180, hell, a 360 from where it was. It also kind of makes me appreciate that even more. But just amazing boxing and just great action. And then honestly, kind of, I guess, going along with kind of the Christmas spirit of anything can happen, if you believe, is Joshua Ruiz 1. It's still a great fight to watch, man. I know Ruiz has been disappointing lately. He's been focusing on updating his physical appearance or downgrading depending on your perspective. But I still like going back and looking at that. That was a hell of a fight and a great moment in boxing, irregardless of how you feel about where the two fighters are in their career now.
Man, those are some good fights. And I want to shout out JC who's in the chat. Thanks for joining us. JC, Off the Ropes Boxing and MMA. The Don is in the house, dude. Hope you guys all stick around. We have a Canelo raffle coming up here in a little bit. And it's for our listeners, man. So I hope you guys stick around. And, dude, those are some great fights, Gringo. I'm telling you, dude, I actually just watched Brer Morales 1 2 days ago by request. My mom wanted to put on. She's a boxing fan, too. We ended up watching 3 fights, but one of them was Brer Morales 1. And well, Barrera was, like, and I'll be honest, bro, I don't even really remember the second or the third one, but my impression of that first one is Barrera was just really bringing it to Morales. He was like the tough guy, man. I mean, both of them were tough, you know what I mean? But damn, like, dude, Barrera he was all grit that night, dude.
Yeah, and it's funny, speaking of boxing about Chile, and I think, hey, your mom knows her stuff for sure. I think it's interesting, like the transitions of each of those fights, because a lot of people feel that the second fight, you think it'd just be a mirror image of the first one, but I thought the second one was Morales' best performance. Like, he was awesome that night. A lot of people feel Morales got robbed that second fight. So, you know, but yeah, the first fight is awesome, man. Just the trilogy overall is just, really special to me. But that first fight is just, it sets the tone for sure. Definitely a great table setter and a great holiday special for sure. Glad you guys embarked on it as well.
Thanks, man. Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna take a look at them anyways, but I'll definitely be scoring that second one. I'll keep that one in mind, man. And then the other fights that I watched over the holiday season so far, this is by request, right? My mom wanted to watch Tony the Tiger Lopez versus Jorge Piazz, and this was in 1990, and it was a championship fight in Sacramento. Damn, like it was 15,000 people showing up, and I was a local guy, so I knew Tony the Tiger Lopez growing up, and I don't really recall Jorge Piazz except for seeing him in some highlights against like Oscar De La Hoya, and then also his highlights. I don't know if you guys have ever seen him dancing around or in his outfits. He's kind of like part Camacho, part Prince Nassim, part Payaso. You know what I'm saying? So he's funny and kind of skillful. He's kind of like a drunken master in there. So stylistically, it was actually kind of fun because we were watching by request, the De La Hoya versus Camacho fight, and that kind of turned formulaic. De La Hoya chasing down Camacho, and it started losing its suspense. And my mom was like, "Okay, well, just put on the Tony Lopez versus Jorge Piazz fight." And I personally thought that was an upgrade. That was actually quite a fun fight to watch stylistically. Like neither one of them wanted to give up too much ground at too often. And they were both like, I wouldn't call it in a phone booth, but they were always in range. And sometimes when it looked like Jorge Piazz was getting beat, he'd come over with some solid shots, solid puncher, man. So that was a lot of fun. And then my personal go-tos are Juan Manuel Marquez versus Juan Diaz. Love that fight. That one's great. It's like the young buck bringing it to the old master, the old master putting him down. That's a great one. And De La Hoya versus Vargas, which is kind of the same thing. Vargas was kind of like the young tough dude. And well, there was a lot of parallels between like when Canelo made his comeback, after a year, like, De La Hoya had some time off. He was worth a lot of money, and people were kind of questioning his ability. So that's a really fun fight. I love comeback fights, and I also love knockouts. My favorites always ended a knockout. And out of curiosity, I ended up watching Wilder versus Fury 3 to see if that was kind of like the new all-time classic. And I could say, watching it in real time, it was definitely the best of the trilogy. And it was a fun fight to watch. But, after the knockdowns, the fight kind of starts losing suspense because you know what's going to happen. And it's just like a methodical breakdown, a beatdown of Wilder towards the end. You know what I mean? So I don't know if I would necessarily call it like, oh, you have to go back and rewatch it because the suspense kind of goes away a little bit. But that doesn't take away from its enjoyment, just as far as like the classic back and forth until it ends. You know what I mean?
No, I definitely agree, man. I even kind of like separating myself from the moment, because when you're in the moment, man, oh, the greatest fight ever, the greatest knockout ever, and you're kind of talking about how you feel within that moment, but stepping away, and then like as we're talking about these actual fights that are more rewatchable, if that's fair to say, then you definitely see a difference, man. Like for me, no joke, the fights like I mentioned, like the war, come on, like that's rewatchable. 30 years from now, people are going to still be watching that fight, like, and have no problems. That fight is just unbelievable. And the suspense is like all the way to the end, because both fighters got hurt, cut, and just so yeah, it's a different level of suspension. You're right. Now, if the fight like would have maybe ended sooner, like, after one of those knockdowns, and there wasn't that, I don't call it a lull, but that that time where they're kind of just both kind of hanging on, and pretty much like you said, that methodical beatdown where Fury just beating down Wilder, and you're kind of just, okay, when is that knockdown coming? That's a lot different from the fights we've already talked about.
Oh yeah, Remy, what's happening, man? Thanks for joining us, brother. Nopal, what do you think, man? What are your go-to fights during the holidays?
Well, I usually whatever is on my mind or whatever. But this holiday season, I actually got into a De La Hoya marathon basically, and I'm not sure if these are in order, but this is the order that I started off with the Corte fight, and then I moved on to the Trinidad fight, and then on to the Vargas fight. And then I went to the Mosley fights, both of them, and then to the Mayorga fight, and then I ended it off with the Mayweather fight. Now I'm not sure if they're in order, but these I don't know why I don't know who was making fun of De La Hoya that it somehow it must have been on my mind to go watch his fights again, and it was pretty nice. It made me really think, like, what was going through De La Hoya's mind during these, because we all know that fighters go through things, and sometimes their mental state has to do a lot with the type of training and the outcomes of fights, so that's what how it went down this holiday season, and it was pretty good. De La Hoya seemed like he always had something to prove, and you could see it in his career. Almost makes me feel like maybe if they would have had told him, hey man, you got to fight a cruiserweight, he might have even felt like he had to do it. It's like he always had some like a chip on his shoulder or something, with the fans or something. And yeah, it was a lot of good fights with De La Hoya.
Nice, bro.
That's
And
awesome, man.
how'd you score the second De La Hoya Mosley fight, or did you even score it, or were you just kind of watching it? And what were your
I didn't
impressions of it?
score them. I thought they could go either way, both of them. I think the first one I did it. I didn't score them though, but the first one it seemed like Mosley could have pulled it off, and then the second one, it's like I felt a little closer to De La Hoya, but both of them, like I said, I think they could have gone either way. That was controversial fights, huh?
Yeah, they said it was controversial, but that second one is hard for me to watch, bro. Like, I feel like De La Hoya tries to touch it up too much. You know what I mean? He's always like, let's touch before we start exchanging. And I don't know, it kind of took away from the flow of the fight, in my opinion. So that one's a little hard for me to watch. I felt like the first one was definitely better. Although I think De La Hoya came more prepared in the second one, and I think he did edge it out, in my opinion. Like, I had him winning, but it's not like he dominated. I was okay with the decision going to Mosley. And like I said, to me, I don't like it when fighters just touch it up over and over and like that. I don't think I've actually seen it so excessive like I saw it in the De La Hoya versus Mosley fight. Now that I think about it, so hey, man, well, great. And Run PMC, bro. We went around the table, so we got all the go-tos. Thank you guys so much. I'm going to take a look at some of these that I haven't already, but I'm familiar with most of them, man. These are all great ones, and I still got some time because I'm not headed home for a few days, man. And I'll tell you this, like, dude, it makes me, especially with the rescoring, it makes me think I should have watched some old classics during the pandemic era. Like, for some reason, I just was not going back, and I find myself going back more now, even though there's a lot more modern boxing for us to appreciate. And I'm not sure like what that's all about, but my appreciation towards fights in the past have just it's gone up exponentially. And it might be because like of our rescoring. Like when I see two people get in the ring, like for instance the Tony Lopez versus Jorge Piazz fight, like I'd never seen it, so I started assessing right away like who I thought was winning, what was working well for each fighter, so you can get a lot of satisfaction out of each round if you really start understanding the sweet science and know what you're looking at. You guys know what I mean?
No, absolutely, man. I can definitely relate, and I think you bring up a good point. Not to diverge too much from like the flow of the show, but a lot of times people get accused of, oh, you're just kind of going old school. You're get off my lawn guy. But I do think, like for me personally, when I go back and look at some of these older fights, and comparing to what we're seeing now as far as the matchups and how often they were fighting and the level of competition and the quality of the fights, I mean, I think it's no comparison. Like the fights more often were better back then. Call it what it is, my bias, but that's honestly how I feel. And going back, it's not just nostalgia. Like they're truly better quality fights from back in the day more consistently. Not saying there's not great fights now, but consistently. And I think that's the difference. You more often saw more quality fights, and that's what the fan base was so much larger, so much bigger, and we were a lot more of a mainstream sport than where we're at now. So I think it definitely has relevancy, and rescoring the fights have made me appreciate the little nuances and things that are happening and look a lot closer. And it does give you a new perspective when you look at fights again. Because like when I look at fights again, I know like it sounds cliche, but like when we're scoring and I'm like, I'm sound like a broken record. I'm sure you guys are like, man, Gringo, shut up. Like, but when I saw like Pacquiao Marquez 3, it was like I saw it for the first time, man. Not to even sound like a commercial, you know what I'm saying? But when you see it and you're looking to truly score it and not hoping for a result, it's a lot more. You appreciate it a lot more. Like I appreciate Marquez even more than I did before. And even though I scored Pacquiao not winning that fight, I appreciate him more because of his footwork and him going in and out and fighting and creating a lot of force in the action. So I definitely feel what you're saying, man.
Dude, great observation. We got higher quality fights back then, and we got them at the right time. And like you said, Sean, like I said, I did classify Marquez Pacquiao 3 as a robbery, but damn, like I felt like Pacquiao was really making that fight. He was the one going in. Marquez was happy just to kind of sit there in his stance, kind of doing like his little hand movement and his head bobbing and fainting, waiting for Pacquiao to come in. And I guess that's what makes that a great style matchup because Marquez is the natural counterpuncher, but Pacquiao, he could have made that fight more boring if he was just kind of dancing around. So it was up to him to make the fight. So you definitely have appreciation for that kind of stuff as you go back. Great topics, man. And hey, dude, let's get to some news and notes, dude. It's been a while since we had a chance to talk about things. And I'll tell you this, we're going to start talking about some fights that have been made probably starting next week because there's been so much coverage and we try to keep this as like a short program. But man, there's all kinds of fights that are made for next year or are being discussed. But one that we wanted to talk about right now is Jake Paul versus Chavez Jr. It looks like it's going down. And, man, this is something that I wanted to talk about, man. But, I got a lot of initial thoughts about this one, and I want to know what you guys think. Sean, what are your initial thoughts on the idea that this fight is actually being negotiated? Chavez Jr. says, we can make that fight, but I want it 50-50. Hey, I'm taking some risk here because I'm going up all the way up to 190. But if I lose, you don't have to pay me and I'll retire. What are your thoughts, bro?
My initial thoughts, just totally being keeping it out Chile. Like when I first heard, I was like, damn, man, no matter what we say about Chavez, man, that dude, God bless his and his family, he can make money no matter what. Like this dude could quit. It doesn't matter. He's still a name. He's still a brand, and that brand is going to give him an opportunity like this. And whether he shows up in his drawers eating Fruit Loops and a bowl of cereal on the scale, it doesn't matter. It's going to be a circus. And I think this kind of fight is a circus that's going to be right up his alley. And I think it's kind of ironic that he would say, if I lose, I'll retire. Shit, I thought I already considered him a retired fighter anyway. So as far as taking him seriously, I know he fought, 2019 against Daniel Jacobson when they threw the boot in the ring when he quit. But yeah, man, it's people don't like it, but Jake Paul is he's an opportunist and he's taking the opportunity, and he is taking his craft serious. Him and his brother, they do train heavily, and they're picking opponents that they feel they have an advantage of. And man, what better advantage than crazy ass Chavez, so it's going to be a circus, and it's going to be all over ESPN and whatever. So I will say this, for me, I'm not going to be like, oh man, I hope Chavez carries the flag and represents boxing and shut this dude up. Oh hell no, man, this dude's crazy. Like if you have that mindset, you're going to walk away disappointed. This brother's going to quit if he hasn't already. So please don't do that to yourselves, man. That's my initial thought.
I don't even know where to start with Chavez Jr. He's disappointed me so much in his boxing career. I mean, at one point in 2000, it was like beginning of 2012. I honestly gave Chavez Jr. I favored him if him and Canelo were to fight, just because this is how big he was, and Canelo was at 154, he's at 160. But if they were to meet at like 160, I honestly thought the Andy Lee versus Chavez, that version of Chavez, had a chance to beat like the Alfonso Gomez, Kermit Cintron version of Canelo. But then he proved me wrong in the Sergio Martinez fight and continue to prove me wrong since then. So I'm glad I didn't really tell many people that until now. But with Jake Paul, I mean, Jake Paul's doing what he has to do. I mean, he's making money. They're paying him. I mean, why wouldn't you keep going? And honestly, fighting, obviously, he hasn't fought an actual boxer yet. He fought like a YouTuber, Nate Robinson, and then 2 MMA fighters. I mean, Tyron Woodley was good in mixed martial arts. He was a champion. I enjoyed watching him. He had a different type of style, and they said he was boring, but I thought he was a pretty dominant champion. But considering when some guys come up, like most prospects or guys that are now considered blue chippers, if you look at the first 4 fights of their careers, Jake Paul is probably right around them, if not fighting better opposition in the last 3 fights at least than some guys when they fight initially. But against Chavez Jr., I mean, you just never know what to expect. You could get a performance like Andy Lee, or you can get a performance like he's done since then, just quitting and not really seeing that interested in training camp. Like the Brian Vera fights, I'll just never forget it. Just the weight changing every day for those fights, and quitting against Fanfara, and then quitting against when he was, in my opinion, beating Daniel Jacobs, and then he just up and quits. And I don't know. I mean, all these fights. So I guess we'll have to see. If I mean, Chavez Jr., he needs to save boxing. This cannot happen. If he loses, we're just never going to hear the end of it. That a guy that basically off the street with that's, I mean, some people say he might have, he's an elite athlete or whatever, which he's proven he's a great athlete, but Jake Paul doesn't have superb genetics, isn't a superb athlete, in my opinion, when you compare him to, like if you compare him to other boxers or if you compare him across the other professional sports in the United States, he doesn't have supreme genetics, but he's proving he's working hard, and he's proven he can make the weight limit that he needs to fight at, and he's proven he's winning. So, I mean, you have to tip your hat from that, and he's making money. So, I mean, I don't think I'd buy his fight, but Chavez Jr., Jake Paul, I'd probably lean a little towards Jake Paul just because the mentality at this point. But I mean, I'll still watch the fight, but not super interested for it. But Chavez Jr. better get ready for this fight because we can't have him quitting in the second round again.
Dude, that lots of great points from both of you guys. No, Paul, what do you think about this, man? Are you and I going to start like the Chavez Jr. train or what? What are your thoughts on this?
Oh, hell no, brother. You know what? The number one thing that comes to my mind when it comes to this fight is Chavez Jr. is already known to, sign up for unwinnable circumstances, with different situations that he's been in. And he does not care about losing. He doesn't care about how stupid he looks. He doesn't care about how much the fans hate him. Nothing like that. I mean, I think you guys all saw when he dressed up like a woman or something like that, with some high heels and was walking across the whatever, with the purse on. I mean, he did that just for a little bit of attention. And, the thing about this fight is that, Jake Paul has the machine behind him and they don't want him to lose. So they're going to make, they're not going to make this easy for Chavez Jr. And you know what? Let's just keep it real here. Chavez Jr. is absolute garbage when it comes to skills and all that. He ain't got nothing. So it doesn't matter what resources they come up with, who they have training him, he's going to lose his fight because he's absolute garbage. And, will I see it? Will I watch it? Yeah, I will. Of course I'm going to see it, because, it is a circus fight. But, as far as, just like Gringo said, I mean, if you're looking at this fight like Chavez Jr. is going to save boxing, nope, you're looking at the wrong dude because that dude does not give a damn about anything.
Damn, bro. Okay, well, dude, I don't know why I like this fight, man. I mean, I don't know if I'm like, here's the thing. I don't disagree with anything anybody had to say, okay? But, I start talking myself into thinking that Chavez Jr. has a chance. And let me tell you why. Okay, take a look at this. These are the accumulated odds, and it's a little blurry. I'm going to be upgrading my technology, but you'll see, like, the smallest underdog out of everybody so far right now is Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. at a plus 225. It starts getting wider and wider as you go down the list from Tommy Fury, Nate Diaz, McGregor. All of a sudden, those become much bigger underdogs, But Chavez Jr. is not that big of an underdog, in my opinion. Like, it's pretty close, 2-1 fight. And, I could see why. Okay, he's shot. He quits. He's got mental problems. He's probably not the most healthy. But, I mean, he does have some fundamentals. You can't go into a fight. Like Run PMC said, you can't go into a fight and win rounds against Danny Jacobs and not have at least some fundamentals. He's got the most fundamentals that Jake Paul's ever seen. I would take Chavez Jr. to beat every single opponent that Jake Paul has fought. Okay. I don't think that Jake Paul has ever faced anybody who could throw combinations like Chavez can, or has body punches the way Chavez can deliver them, or has the chin that Chavez has. Even though he quits, the guy still has a chin, man. And the dude actually had a prime. Okay, everybody forgets that, but he wasn't bad at the time. And okay, here's a couple other things. And maybe I'm just talking myself into this. You know, you guys could talk me off the ledge, you know, but I'll tell you this, dude, like I'm starting to believe in like people coming in at their natural weight. Like I think that Pacquiao had that as an advantage kind of in a way. And I think Canelo kind of has that as an advantage in a certain way. And I think that with this fight, Chavez is talking about like, oh, he'll have to come up. But like, I think the guy's naturally big anyway, so he won't have to struggle with making weight. So if he starts thinking that the family name is at stake, and I know he should have thought that before, okay, don't get me wrong, but if he starts really getting down on this one, thinking I could beat this guy, and he starts training because he doesn't want to be embarrassed, even though he's already been embarrassed, like I just think there's this chance he could win, man. On top of that, too, like, yeah, Jake Paul, he looked good in his last fight, but it's like my boy Dwyer says, knockouts cause amnesia. Like, I don't think he looked that great up into the lead up of the knockout, and on top of that, he looked gassed. They were clinching way too much. Like, I question that dude's stamina overall. Like, if it starts going into the deep rounds, if Chavez is just there, if he could take the shots, not to mention, dude, like, if Chavez can connect, and I've never heard anybody say that he can't connect. If he starts connecting on Jake Paul effectively, like, I don't know how much Jake Paul's going to have towards the end. If he starts getting hit in the body, you know, his tank starts going down a little bit. I mean, can he land that wild haymaker? Like he sets that punch up all the time. Somebody like Chavez Jr. might be able to discover it, you know? So like I said, I'm not going to place any money on this, and you can't ever count on Chavez Jr. in my opinion. But you know what? I think he has one hell of a chance, man. So like, those are my evolved thoughts on it. I kind of like this fight. I won't pay for it necessarily, but if it goes off, man, I'll tell you, dude. Like, I don't know, man. Like, I'm gonna look forward to it with some fascination. And as far as what Nopal said about the machine protecting Jake Paul, I kind of get that, you know. But Chavez has his own machine too, and it's like, well, and how many resources does Jake Paul have? This is kind of like a circus show, you know. So those are my thoughts. I just kind of want to know what you guys have to say about what I have to say. You know what I mean? What do you guys think?
Make some good points, Chicano. You're definitely getting me excited for this fight. Now I'm just looking forward to them actually negotiating it, you know, because Chavez Jr. is saying something about a 50-50 split, which we know is ridiculous. But, I mean, you got to start somewhere. And, of course, he's not going to say 60-40 in his favor. But it's interesting to see where the negotiations will lead, whether, you know, because there's different angles, whether Jake Paul even really wants to fight Chavez Jr. or vice versa, you know? So I guess we'll see.
I think that you bring some good points up for sure. I mean, because, you know, I've always said, you know, and I share with my brother Hopper all the time. It's like, damn, man, it's all crazy to go back and look at Chavez, that last round he gets, you know, Sergio Martinez, and, you know, how he was, you know, destroying him and how the crowd was going crazy. You know, I had friends that were at that fight and talk about literally you thought the roof was going to come off, man, like how much people adore him and love him and revere him because of the name of his father. So there's always going to be a foul with him, and I always respected that. But like what he is, he's like when Paul says he's anti-legacy from the standpoint of he knows he'll never live up to it, so he's kind of spits in the face of it all the time. But people keep throwing money his way. I'm not going to say, oh, I'm not going to watch that fight, and you know he's a disgrace. I will say I hope that something motivates him. Obviously, money motivates him, and he'll show up and put on a performance where he doesn't at least quit. You know, that would be something. Because this is a guy that we talk about, and you were saying, you know, half-heartedly, but I believe, you know, he did have a prime, man. You know, there was a time period where, yeah, I agree with Run PMC. It sounds crazy now. I hope I don't get hit by lightning, but that was a time where I thought he could beat Canelo. There was, you know, I mean, when he beat Andy Lee in El Paso, man, that was great. That was the best Chavez ever was, Junior. So that guy still lives in there somewhere. So, and there's enough of that could definitely beat Jake Paul. And hurt him badly. If you can knock out Andy Lee and make Andy Lee quit, so I'll definitely watch it. And I'll say this too, because I don't want to make it think I'm just pissing and disrespecting, Chavez Jr. He's got natural abilities that Jake Paul will never have with all his millions and supporters and sponsors. So there's definitely something there. And then finally, as far as for Jake Paul, well, honestly, where I started respecting him wasn't the Woodley knockdown, and people don't talk about this, you can only fight who goes in front of you. Tommy Fury ducked him, man. So people don't really talk about that. So if that don't make you a boxer, I don't know what does. When boxers duck you, because Tommy Fury pulled out of that fight, 2 weeks before? So, I mean, you can only fight who's in front of you. That'd have been Tommy Fury's biggest payday, biggest everything. He was talking crazy with his, dad and I'm a fighting man and all that. Man, he pulled out, man. He ducked. I mean, I forgot what he said. He got injured or he tripped and I don't know, whatever he did. All I know is he didn't take that fight. So, Jake Paul's doing something right because fighters know if you take that fight and you lose that shit, man, it's over. It is over. And then Fury's from the UK too. Oh man, they won't let him back in the country. You can't lose. He couldn't even lose a round to Jake Paul. So, like I said, Jake Paul knows what he's doing. So hopefully they do fight.
Hey man, I'm all for it, dude. So we'll see. Run PMC, you got any final thoughts on this before we move on, man? Have I converted you, dude? Are you on the train with me or what?
I mean, I'll always watch. I was always going to watch the fight if and when it happens, but I just can't trust Chavez anymore. Like this guy, like after just all the stuff he had going, like the Andy Lee fight. Granted, he weight trained himself a ton for that fight and came back and then rehydrated up and just beat the crap out of Andy Lee and he just had his chin was just indestructible no matter what he got hit in that fight. He was just like it was crazy. But then he comes back in the next fight, the biggest fight of his career against Sergio Martinez, who was really, they say Cotto and Martin Murray destroyed Sergio Martinez. No, Chavez Jr. in the last round destroyed him. And if his performance that he had against Andy Lee, if he had like 50 or 60% of that effort in that training camp that he gave for Sergio Martinez, he would have destroyed Sergio Martinez because just it's the sheer size of Chavez. And Martinez was given a boxing lesson and beating the crap out of him, but he wasn't given heavy exchanges like he was in the second Paul Williams fight. And it's because Chavez Jr. probably was in the 180s on fight night, up 20 plus pounds. And then that was Chavez's advantage. Yes, he's not as skilled as guys, but you have to play to your advantages. And if you can make the weight, that's the weight division you fight at. And that's what he was doing. But I just can't trust him anymore because he could have beat Sergio Martinez. I'll never forgive him for that because that was ridiculous. And then they were going head to head on that night. I think Canelo was fighting Josecito, same city. They're at the Thomas and Mack, and I think the Canelo was at the MGM Grand, and that really was the end of Chavez Jr. and the birth of Canelo, in my opinion, in the eyes of, I guess, the public regarding Mexican fighters and who's going to be the top Mexican fighter going forward. It was the death of Chavez, and then Canelo was born, and then Canelo that next year, because that was 2012, he fought Floyd Mayweather the next year. So I don't know.
That's a good point, and that's for me personally. If you want to benchmark things, that was definitely, I would say, like the peak of my Canelo lack of respect, I guess. I don't want to say just straight up hate. I wanted to see him do well, but because I remember the Josecito, that card where De La Hoya had like that knockout bonus bullshit.
Yep.
Man, I did not like that, man. Like, so I just thought they brought up Josecito, so that all kind of rubbed me the wrong way. So you're right. That's a great point, Run PMC. I was really hoping that, Chavez would take the mantle, and he did it. He got boxed, and then when he had a broken down Sergio Martinez in front of him, he couldn't finish it. And I do think, that was a huge night for boxing, just overall.
Yeah, and I wanted to add to what Run PMC was saying about, we just don't trust Chavez Jr. anymore, and, I mean, who's to say that he's above taking an extra envelope, just to lose on this fight, I mean, I just don't trust Chavez Jr. and, we can't count on him for anything, not even entertainment. So that's about it.
Bro, you make a good point, and I didn't touch on that, but I mean, there's this conspiracy theory that sometimes Chavez throws his fights, to maybe make some money on the under. I mean, who knows? Like, I wouldn't put anything past this dude at all. So the possibility of him just kind of taking a dive for an early night and a quick payday, like he's done it before. The only thing that could save him, like I said, would be some pride and thinking that hey, this could elevate me to another fight. Like it really depends. There's a lot of factors. Like I said, I'm gonna watch it, but from a distance, man. Hey, dude, all great considerations, dude.
I have one last thing to say.
Yes, sir.
So if I'm correct, Jake Paul had a 3-fight deal with Showtime, and it started with the Woodley fight. So if this is on Showtime, then this will be the last fight. So, and we've seen what Showtime does to their fighters. Like Landy Lara won on the last fight of their deal in the Canelo fight. No, I'm just kidding. No, but for real, like we'll see if Showtime can either, depending what Jake Paul, what platform he decides to go to, they could try to screw him somehow, Jake Paul, or they might be lining up another deal so then he's winning, like we talked about, at all costs. Jake Paul's getting the victory. So that's the way I look at it, just from like a quasi business standpoint.
Hey man, I hope that fight gets made. So, dude, we're going to keep up the good energy, man. I'm glad to be back with the Al Chile crew. The band is back together, man. And you know what? The Canelo lottery has begun, man. We're going to have a little bit of fun with this for our audience. We have a limited audience today, which is good, man. I want my hardcore listeners to take advantage of the situation. So we're going to have a little contest, a free giveaway, courtesy of Al Chile. And it's real easy. Here's my recommendation for you guys. Whoever's listening, have your fingers ready because you need to type something in the chat. And that's gonna be your order in which we do things, right? So the sooner you do it, the better. All right. So whoever's listening, all you got to do is type HCP in the chat, and that will give us the order. Let's see who's here. Come on in, chime in. And if it's a small group, all the better for you, man. Get in on this. Whether you're a content creator or a listener, man, like, let's see who's here. Type HCP in the chat, and we're going to get it going. And check this out, dude, while we're waiting. These are actual, like, Canelo lottery stubs out of Mexico. What a trip, huh? All right. So, Remy, you're going to be up first. Thank you, man. And by the way, those who don't know what Remy's got going on, dude, the guy puts together some awesome highlight videos, dude. So I suggest people take a look at them. Subscribe to Remy, man. He put together, just recently, he did the Kovalev Ward fight. He did all kinds of things, man. So go back and shoot your link too, Remy, if you got a chance. So we got Remy and then JC. Sweet. All right. Okay, and here's what we're going to be doing while we're waiting. We are going to ask you guys who you think Canelo will be fighting next, okay? And then I'm going to list off the names here. All right, Brian's in. Good. We're going to be listing off the possible opponents: Makabu, Beterbiev, Bivol, Joe Smith Jr., Benavidez, Charlo, Andrade, Triple G, or other, okay? So what we're going to do, the dawn is up. So, Remy, you're up first, man. You get to pick who you think Canelo will fight next. And if you get it right, we will be paying for your next viewing experience when Canelo fights. And it's our pleasure, man. We really appreciate everybody that's out there. I want to thank the listeners so much for hanging out with us as we transition this show over to my channel. We just enjoy talking boxing. And it's been great having Sean join us, and we appreciate your patience. We don't always get a chance to kind of look at the comments all the time. And it's only because I'm trying to manage things and I'm still fairly new to it. You know what I mean? And I appreciate the quiet listeners. I see you guys out there as well. I know you're listening and I appreciate it. And the archive listeners. So let's see. All right, man. So I think we got enough going here with Dave Morrell Jr. Jr. the Destroyer. All right, man. We're going to start. So Remy thinks that Benavidez is going to be the next opponent. Someone put that down. All right. JC, you are up. Who do you think that Canelo will fight next? All right. And excuse me while I'm half writing too at the same time. So we got Ace 144. All right. So the question, David Morrell Jr., the Destroyers, who do you think Canelo will fight next? And then, you get your pick based on your order. So Remy went up first and he picked Benavidez. And so right now it's JC's turn. He thinks that Beterbiev will be the next opponent. All right. So interesting. Makabu has not been selected yet. And I understand that Triple G's in negotiations, but I wanted to put him there. And so, just like Benavidez said he might fight Lemieux, but hey, I still listed him, and Remy thinks that he's the next guy to see. You know what I mean? So, all right. And Brian, if you're still there, bro, tell us who you think Canelo will fight next. The available options are Makabu, Bivol, Joe Smith Jr., Charlo, Andrade, Triple G, or other. And we'll give Brian a little bit of time to chime in here. And while we're waiting, dude, if you had to guess yourself, Sean, what do you think, man? Who do you think would be the number one guy? Who's most likely?
I think that right now, the guy that seems like actually it was kind of teased before he actually took his last fight. So I think because everybody said that Bivol got played, so I think that's the reason. Well, that's me. I think that's part of the reason why Bivol didn't take the fight with Zerto, because he's waiting on. He's holding his Canelo ticket tightly, put it under his pillow at night, kiss it before he goes to bed. So I think Bivol, man.
Hey, man, I like that, dude. That's and he's still available. So it looks like David Morrell has picked Joe Smith Jr. Hey, man, yeah, these are legitimate boxing tickets. Team Batman Boxing. I'm going to add you to the list here. So it looks like Ace 144 has picked. Let's see here. Hold on. So I need to start getting my things in order here. So Joe Smith Jr. was picked by. Let's see here. Pardon me, real quick while I do this. So Brian picked Makabu, and then David Morrell picked Joe Smith Jr. And so Ace 144, you're up. So Joe Smith Jr. has been selected, so you need to pick someone else if you please. And then Team Batman Boxing, what we're doing right now is we are picking Canelo's next opponent, and if you get it right, then I will be paying for your next viewing pleasure. I'm hoping it's the zone, but I would also pay for pay-per-view. This is my ghetto promotional art. Sean cleaned it up for me, as he always does. But right now, it looks like we have Bivol, Charlo, Andrade, Triple G, or other left available. So if you want to make your selection, Ace 144, you have about 10 more seconds. I wish I had some I'm going to clean this up. Once we get some technology going, man, I'm going to have some promotional music, you know what I mean? Some game show tunes, things like that. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. So Team Batman Boxing, thanks for joining us, bro. If you're still here, you're up next, bro. You get to show. All right. Looks like he's ready to go with Bivol. All right. Cool. So we got that. All right. So slide tendencies. Let's see. Sorry about that, brother. Looks like you're up next, man. You know, this is a human error, but hey, things work out sometimes, dude. So slide tendencies. You could choose between Charlo, Andrade, Triple G, or other. Please let us know who you'd like next. Sorry about the mistake, man. Hope you don't get mad. This is all done with love. All right. And check out, this is Brian's clean little image right here. Okay. And then Run PMC, who do you think, man? If you had to pick who Canelo will fight next, what would you say?
Joe Smith's has a fight in January, so depending how, I could probably give you a more definitive answer, see if he comes out unscathed out of that fight. But I would say right now leaning towards Bivol, because I mean, Beterbiev got cut up pretty badly in his fight, so I don't know if that's going to impede on the fight happening. I mean, if Canelo fights in May. So I think it's going to be, I'm leaning towards Bivol right now, but it could be Joe Smith Jr., just depending on that, if he doesn't get any cuts and wins in a few weeks. But so right now, leaning towards Bivol.
Interesting. Yeah, you know, I heard Eddie Hearn talking about that too. He was saying that he's going to make his offers here, and he would love to see Canelo go for undisputed at 175. And he's like, hey, I'll make the Bivol fight, and then he could fight, Joe Smith, and then he could fight Beterbiev. So there's definitely an outright planned. It's all up to Canelo. So slide tendencies, you got about 5 more seconds if you'd like to list somebody. Other than that, we're going to go back to Remy, who will have another choice at an opponent. And actually, there's still some middleweights out there. I guess people don't have much faith in the middleweights getting this fight, surprisingly, but not surprisingly. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, I don't see it. Remy, you are up next, my friend. You could pick Charlo, Andrade, Triple G, or other.
Yeah, I have another
Oh,
point too.
Sorry, hold on. I don't mean to interrupt. It looks like the Don is here, and I don't think I have him listed. So the Don, I'm going to slide you in for the other, since you have not been put in. So you get to pick between Charlo, Andrade, and Triple G. Remy, if you're still Bivol. Bivol's already been taken, my friend. So you can choose between Charlo, Andrade, and Triple G. Sorry, go ahead, Rumpy, and see what were you saying, brother?
Yeah, I was saying that another reason that I probably lean towards Bivol, thinking about it now, that even if Joe Smith wins and is uncut, undamaged, is that Joe Smith's with Top Rank, or at least fights on ESPN and co-promoted by Top Rank, and then Bivol is on ESPN and at least, or not Bivol, sorry, Beterbiev is co-promoted by Top Rank as well. So I could see them trying to consolidate those 3 belts, and then if Canelo fights Bivol, whoever the winner is that, then they just do Undisputed from there. So that'd be nice if we can get Undisputed at 175 in 2022 before the end of the year, but it seems pretty simple to me. You have Smith wins, he fights Better Beef sometime this year, and then Canelo fights Bivol, and the winners fight. Pretty simple.
Nice.
Yeah, that's my little Christmas dream too, man. Like I don't have that many things that I want anymore. But Undisputed, as this year is coming to a close, how do you measure success in boxing? Everybody says, oh, they had a lot of good fights, but the more undisputed champions you have, the less debate on who's the champion, this guy or that guy. Now we got, thanks to the WBC, we got a Pride champion now. So, I like to keep things clean and simple. So people can say what they want, but if Canelo can get 175 and clean that bad boy up, I mean, what more can you say at that point? That would be unbelievable. And like our brother from PMC just said, the path is really kind of there. The landscape is kind of already set. I think it's really just a matter of him executing and moving forward on it. Hopefully he does.
Oh, yeah. JC, you were up next, my friend, and you can choose between Andrade or Triple G for your next one. And, dude, those are great observations, you guys. The one thing I'll have to say, though, is, I think that when Canelo outlines his plans, I feel like fighters take advantage of it. And, I just don't want these dudes pricing themselves out. It'd be nice if you kind of had, some kind of loose agreements with all of them ahead of time, so you could sit there and go, okay, let's fight in September, you know what I mean? And you'll be taking this much, and then I'll fight somebody else in December and you'll be taking this much. If he goes to Better Beef or whoever he goes to last to go undisputed, I don't like that idea that they can just kind of hold the last trinket hostage, and I wouldn't say that towards Better Beef. I think he's the champ until somebody else is different because he's the unified, you know what I mean? But I don't know, man. All right. So, well,
that's a valid point for sure. I would just say they also know, irregardless, it's their biggest payday, and you don't bite the hand that feeds you. So they're not going to fuck around too much. You know what I'm saying? They're going to go into negotiation with some leverage, but they're not going to let the deal fall through.
All right. So, Brian, if you're in the house, all you got to do is say that you're here, and then you get the last pick, which is Andrade. And then if not, we're going to David Morrell Jr. next. So if you're in the house, Brian, let me know. And then if not, David Morrell will score that last little slot, dude. So we got about 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, David Morrell, looks like you're here right now. So I'm just going to go ahead and put you down. So thank you guys so much for participating. So we're all set, man. Everybody's got their particular opponents that they've chosen for Canelo, and we'll see how it all plays out, man. And we're going to talk more about this Canelo lottery as this all plays out. And you've all made a lot of great points. I don't think that Canelo needs to choose anybody to our satisfaction. But when we were preparing this show, Sean made a couple of great points in our group text, and he wants to talk a little bit about this idea that Canelo is avoiding Mexican fighters from his perspective, man. And I want to get his take on it. You know what I mean? He's the guy who keeps us honest. You know what I mean? He's not Mexican. You know what I mean? So I got to listen to him and hear what he has to say, and then I'll go ahead and be biased. You know what I mean? So, John, go ahead. Tell us what's going on, bro. Tell us what's going on.
All right, man. So, I'm just a brother from H-Town, man, doing my thing, bleeding my block. No, I'm not that at all. I'm pretty square. But when it comes to boxing, you hear a different thing in the streets. And, in the land of Charlo, where I'm at, a lot of, not just, brothers, but fans that are anti-Canelo, and I say specifically Mexican fight fans, they throw a certain narrative out there that I've never really quite understood. Back in 2017, so we were talking about Chavez, that was the last time that Canelo fought Mexican, somebody from Mexico, somebody with Mexican heritage. And he said something that I don't know if it was misquoted or misinterpreted to Azteca TV, that, and I'm just kind of paraphrasing, that, he's not fighting Mexicans, basically. He don't feel that is right. He doesn't want to do it again. Now, keep in mind, as there's during that time, Chavez was talking a lot of smack. His father was going to always support his son. There's a big following, and I'm sure that Canelo, because he wants to be Mexico's fighter. So forward to where we are now, going towards 2022 in a few days, I'm still of that mindset, and he hasn't fought any other Mexican fighter. So how important do you think that is? Do you think maybe that was a misinterpretation? It was within the moment, because keep in mind, like, it was translated from Spanish to English multiple times. You think it was taken out of context, or do you think at that moment he did mean that? But he's willing to fight whoever. I know that as of recently as last year, this time last year, he wanted Zordo Ramirez to be on his undercard when he fought at Cowboy Stadium versus Liam Smith, and stupid Zordo said no. He fought the Friday before in Galveston, and I wasn't even able to go because it was so hard to get to. But anyway, so he's shown interest on wanting to collaborate with the Mexican fighters and obviously support Mexican fighters specifically. He FaceTimes everybody. He's a big proponent of helping grow the sport. So his platform has grown exponentially. So do you think that's I wanted to ask you guys, El Chile, my brothers in El Chile, is that a narrative when brothers throw it out there, or just hating Canelo fans? Does that really matter? Is that something that you think he takes in consideration, that he's not willing to divide the country or Mexican fight fan support? Do you think that's anything that comes into play with his negotiations? Like, no way I'll fight Benavidez ever. It's not because of the risk, because of the fan base. I have to be Mexican's fighter. Like, I'm not going to fight, anybody that could potentially, put me at risk of, losing that distinction of being Mexican's greatest champion during the era where I'm, in my prime. So I just kind of want you to know, first of all, did I misinterpret that, or did you guys hear that? And do you think it's even relevant at all to what's going on in boxing?
I mean, it all depends what people want to spin, I guess. I mean, the only fighter, like, I'd never viewed Zudo Ramirez as being a threat to Canelo. The only threat that I'd say to be a current Mexican boxer that's around that age, or around that weight, sorry, around the weight classes, would be David Benavidez. But no, I mean, I think Canelo, he sets his, at least recently, when he went to 168, he set his goal of becoming undisputed, and that was the goal. We don't really know what the goal is now, because Canelo seemed to sort of backtrack from the cruiserweight discussion, and he said Eddie Reynoso blindsided him with that announcement, which I don't really buy that, because I can't believe that there wasn't discussion, because they said, like, people were gasping when they were at the convention, but then according to reports is that there was conflicting reports, because some reports said that it was already granted and that was just sort of for show. And there are other reports saying that that was an actual announcement, because I doubt at the convention, I know for some things they probably have open forum, but I doubt, like, with the biggest star in boxing, they're going to have just an open discussion like that. But I don't think Canelo necessarily at this point will duck Mexican boxers. I just think there aren't really the supply of the amount, it really isn't there of Mexican boxers. Like I said, David Benavidez was really the only one I viewed. And Zurdo Ramirez, I mean, I think he clearly beat Jesse Hart, but he was sort of on that level before. He wasn't at that top level. Even David Benavidez was at a higher level, in my opinion, than Zurdo Ramirez. So I don't think that's necessarily that Canelo ducks guys. I mean, people said Floyd ducked African-American boxers. And then if you look at his career at certain points, maybe you could say things like, I think Paul Williams would have been the biggest test for Floyd, in my opinion, bigger than Antonio Margarito. And that fight just didn't happen for whatever reasons. But, I mean, I think there could be – I mean, then again, I'm not privy to all negotiations and all discussions that go on behind closed doors. And maybe some guys don't share. It might have been just maybe David Benavidez at one point was in discussions, and then it broke off, and then he went another route. So we don't know truly, but for just me, outsider looking in, I don't necessarily think he ducks Mexican boxers. If there's a clear chance that Benavidez could fight him and there's no one else available, or Canelo doesn't declare he wants to go undisputed, like if Canelo says, I want to fight the best guys between 168 and 175, and say David Benavidez goes on a tear and he just ignores him, then I would say he's ducking. But at this point, no, because he achieved his goal at 168. If he says he wants to go at 175 and go at it, David Benavidez better try to get a belt, or else he's not going to get the fight because Canelo set his goal. So that's why it's like, I think David Benavidez is good, a great boxer. I don't know if he could. I know he's a big guy, but I don't know because the guys at 175 are just bigger than him, and they possibly could be stronger. So I don't know this, because there is this situation that I think about when I think about defending Undisputed is like, I like Undisputed if the best boxers in the division have the belts. If the best boxers don't have the belts, I just want to see the best fights. And I don't know if David Benavidez moving to 175 is one of the best boxers. He could definitely be, I think, top 3, but I don't know because Joe Smith, like I think he's a better boxer than Joe Smith Jr., but Joe Smith's power is real. And David Benavidez has a good chin when he fights guys that are not necessarily punchers, but we don't see every chin's cracked. Like guys in modern boxing that you think have great chins, like Brandon Rios and then like Chavez Jr. When that chin cracked, it was never the same. It was gone. Danny Garcia with a right hand was knocking out Brandon Rios, and Fanfara was stopping Chavez Jr. So it all depends what you look at. But as a whole, I don't think Canelo necessarily is ducking anyone as of right now. Like I said, if Benavidez goes on a tear and Canelo says he fights anyone and doesn't fight him, then I think he's ducking him.
No, I mean that's some good stuff, brother. Go ahead, No Paul. I was just gonna just comment real quick that the landscape has changed, the narrative has changed, but it keeps being brought up. Like just we talk about the Canelo Lara fight keeps being brought up, even though that was 8 years ago, going on 9 now. But this keeps being brought up like, oh no, he's not gonna fight Mexican fighters. So sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to say thanks for bringing this up, because I don't think we've had a chance to touch on this subject. And, every time I see a video that's alluding to this question where they're kind of disgracefully talking about Canelo, like, hey, he's a racist, or they use different angles. One's he's a racist, so he's pro-Mexican and he's like a Mexican superior type of dude, and he's not allowed to talk this way, They use different angles when they talk about this. And, I find it very ironic. First of all, I'll start with this. I find it very ironic because the people that hit us with these angles, they're very pro to their side of things. So they're allowed to do it. But, when they hear somebody else talking this way, they pretend as if it wasn't one of their guys. This wouldn't be music to their ears and they wouldn't absolutely love this, So that's one reason why I think it's kind of ironic. And the other thing is, they're completely just overstepping the context and the timeline of this whole, situation. As we all know, Canelo was asked basically about Jaime Munguia, which, in my opinion, that would be an absolute joke of a fight. Canelo versus Munguia, people would probably tear Canelo to pieces on this one because it'd be an absolute cherry pick. And, so the Mexican, I guess, news or whatever asked Canelo about this, how about a fight with Jaime Munguia? Because I guess Jaime Munguia has been asked and he, of course, he says, yeah, that's my dream fight. But, in reference to this, Canelo says that, he doesn't want to, he represents Mexico and he doesn't want to put no hurt about, he wants to just uplift the people. He doesn't want to beat them down like that. So, in my opinion, the way I look at it is, he was actually being merciful to Munguia, because of course he can be merciful a different way and give him a payday. But then what does he have to do? Carry the dude for a couple rounds and not even knock him out just because of that, just because he doesn't want to hurt his own people. So in other words, I mean, for me, it's it's kind of a joke of a fight. So I always understood what he meant by, he doesn't want to hurt his Mexican people. But as far as fighting Zurdo or Benavidez, I think that's a completely different story. As far as Benavidez, he's not a Mexican national. He wasn't born in Mexico or anything like that. So the people wouldn't even have a problem with that. In fact, he's, half Ecuadorian and Mexican, which I don't think that makes a difference, because over here out west, there's a lot of, basically just the whole Hispanic community rides with each other over here. I even have friends that were, of Puerto Rican descent that, we all rode together over here. We hung out and everything. And so it's like, one big nation kind of. And, of course, everybody else hangs out with each other. There's not much racism over here, And as far as Canelo ducking him, I think he's earned enough, leverage to say, hey, I want to see Benavidez do a little more, because in my opinion, the Benavidez fight is just along with like the Charlo fight and the Andrade fight. I kind of look at these fights like kind of like easy fights. They would be exciting and everything, but nevertheless, I'm kind of like looking to the bigger fights like Beterbiev and, Bibble. Even Zurdo Ramirez would be a great fight in my opinion. So, yeah, with the whole Zurdo thing, Zurdo's on a mission to get that Bibble fight right now. And I think Zurdo understands that if he gets the Bibble fight out of the way, that he definitely almost be promised a Canelo fight, but, I think what's going to happen there is, like you said, Gringo, Bivol is, he's got his kind of like his ticket for the sweepstakes already because he's been in negotiations already. So, why put that at risk, for fighting Zurdo and possibly losing? So I guess what might happen there is the air might be cleared and at least Zurdo can say that, hey, the dude doesn't want to fight me. So, you fight me, Canelo. And I don't see no problem with that. I think that if the fight has enough notoriety or whatever, I think Canelo will go for that fight. And I think that thing about not fighting Mexicans was purely meant for in reference to fighting Munguia. And I guess the last thing for me is the real question about things is when's the last time Canelo didn't come through on opponent that the public said, hey, you're ducking this guy, and everybody collectively gets together and they make the fight big like they did with the Triple G thing, and hey, when are you gonna fight this guy? He eventually fought him. So I think that's what it would take.
No, that's a great point in regards to definitely. He said Mexicans. I mean, he had just fought, Chavez Jr. Boxing name royalty, if nothing else, at that time. And he saw the split that it had. And then 2017, Munguia, man, he's coming to in his own now, and I'm excited to see him fight. I'd love Munguia versus Triple G, man. That would be awesome. But 2017 version? Oh, hell no. So that's a great point. And I've never heard, even though that's a part of the context of when it was referenced, people never mention Munguia with that statement. So that's a great point, brother. Good job, Nopal. Thank you for that.
Thanks,
yeah,
bro.
man. Here's what I got to say about the whole thing. Great observations all around, and I think we're all just in agreement. Like, this is kind of a weird thing to be hearing. Like, it's kind of coming up to my doorstep often. Like, I was making fun of Drew Evil the week before last when I was referencing how he says that the Mexicans, shouldn't be, accepting Canelo's words. But those are old statements, man. Like, okay, here's my time frame from when I remember. Like, Sean, you were mentioning like that 2017, 2018, like that's when he was high, and then I think the quote was right around that time, kind of sometime like maybe like after the Ali Liam Smith fights where he was looking good, but
Right.
in 2019 he fought Dennis Hogan and he didn't look great. A lot of people thought he got a gift. I didn't score it at the time, but I remember thinking, wow, Munguia got lucky on this one. Okay. And he didn't look all that great, and then the talk kind of went away because all of a sudden he looked like, he didn't have stamina. Looked like he could barely scratch out wins against people like Dennis Hogan. You know what I mean? So, like, that talk kind of went away, in my opinion. I mean, the guy's still undefeated, don't get me wrong, but I was high on Munguia early, okay? I've been on the Munguia train. I have the receipts for it. But I always thought, like, when Canelo said, like, I'd rather not fight a Mexican. And we found the quote, he said nothing's off the table completely, but he'd rather not. So it's not like he said, I won't do it. He just said, hey, like, it might not be good for Mexican boxing. And let's not get it twisted. You guys are looking at the torchbearer of Mexican boxing, and it's been like that for years. In fact, you can make the argument that he's been carrying Mexican boxing on his back for years. Any nation would be very happy to have somebody like Canelo Alvarez being the torchbearer. The guy has the greatest resume in the modern generation as far as who's currently fighting. And I think it was kind of a mercy to Munguia. Let's not forget that Munguia was a 154-pounder when all this talk was going on. He hadn't moved up to middleweight yet. All those like Saddam Ali, Dennis Hogan's, like that's all super welterweight. You know what I mean? And so now it's kind of like everybody gets mad, but it's like that fight was only maybe an option a while ago. Like people got off that fight. It wasn't like a hot fight after a little while. Canelo was doing his own thing, moving up as he should. He's allowed to do everything on his own time frame. And then there's this idea that it carries on to Benavidez, and people get all angry about this quote that was a long time ago. It's like, well, first off, I don't understand that really. Like, Team Canelo, Reynoso, has said, yeah, we're considering Benavidez. You could go to Fight Hype, and there's an interview where Canelo says, like, hey, you know, and this is in the lead up to the Plant fight. He goes, if that's the fight that's next, they asked him about Benavidez. He goes, if that's the fight that's next, although I'm focused on Plant, if that's the fight, then we'll do it. No problem. Sin dudas, right? But people act like they don't hear, and they still act like it's this news. And it's like, either you're misinformed, or you're just hating, or you secretly want Canelo to fight Benavidez because you think that maybe Benavidez will beat Canelo. But here's the thing about Benavidez fans. Like, I don't ever really hear them saying that Benavidez will beat Canelo. They just want to see it, they say. You know, so it's just like a bizarre thing to me. Like, okay, he hasn't really done anything to be in front of the line. You're not even saying that this guy will beat Canelo. And you're not even necessarily saying that this guy is the best person to face Canelo or has the best chance of beating Canelo. Like, I've heard a lot of people who were harping on Benavidez go to better beef, which makes sense. I think that might be the toughest fight, but I also think that Canelo would win. I think that Canelo would easily beat Benavidez. So to me, I kind of see it as a mercy. You know, like, he could fight Benavidez next, but that really doesn't benefit Benavidez outside of the payday. I think he will take the loss. I will not be stressed about that fight. And here's the thing, like, it would divide the fans. Like, you know, if you're okay, coming from like a Mexican American like myself, like, people are going to choose, and Canelo is the face of boxing. He's wildly popular. Like, if you make the Mexican fans choose, you're going to get some fringe weirdo Benavidez fans. The rest of them are going to be a Canelo fan, and they're just going to actively start rooting for Canelo. A lot of these dudes don't even know who David Benavidez is. Like, I could tell you this, like, if Canelo went to Arizona, he'd probably sell way more than David Benavidez in Phoenix. Like, I've been to Arizona recently, okay, and I wear Canelo gear, and I see other people with Canelo gear, okay, and we give like each other like thumbs up. Like, I doubt Benavidez has that kind of shine, you know, although he could do well. Don't get me wrong, he's a local favorite, but this idea, like, Benavidez has no real army. Like, if you're a Benavidez fan like myself, you're probably a Canelo fan, and Canelo's probably earned your respect along the way. So, like, these people that are harping on this fight, like, they're just going to be standing alone on the little island. Everybody else will be rooting for Canelo. And I think most people who know how to break down the sweet science will also believe that Canelo is going to handle Benavidez. So to me, like, it's just a weird statement to have. You know, I also think that it could be that a little bit of an audience wants Benavidez to be that guy to fight Canelo because they secretly think that maybe their guy will lose, right? So they go, okay, well, let's just have these two Mexicans face each other, you know, and they can hope for the best and hope that Canelo loses, right? But if Benavidez loses, hey, not a big deal. You know, their fighter's still protected. Because right now, like, before the better be fight, I kept hearing Benavidez. Now I'm hearing, oh, you know, better be. But it's just like this goalpost. And like I said, like, I really don't care what people have to say. Like, you know, I don't really care about Canelo living up to certain people's standards anymore. Like, to me, it's kind of laughable. You know, those people that think like they're in the middle. Hey, I'm not a fanboy. I'm in the middle. Like, I think you guys need to get over yourselves a little bit. You're not fooling anybody. And that's what I got to say about it. Anybody got anything else to add? See, Gringo, you got me all worked up, bro. You see me talking shit over here?
Hey, no, I like it, man. I like the passion Chicano is. Good stuff from all y'all. Like, so, just kind of add some context from the H-Town brother perspective. It's like, so, I always compared it to, because I'm always thinking in terms of business. Like, I don't think he's ducking or he fears anybody, because even if you say maybe, you know, better Vive is obviously a different conversation, but pretty much everybody else, or at least the guys we're speaking of, I think most people would favor Canelo in those fights. I mean, just off the top, right? So with that being said, is it just national? We talked about the whole component as far as Munguia, but do you think, like, does any marketability come into play? Kind of like Run PMC said for Mayweather, how Mayweather, you know, he didn't want to fight African American fighters. He always wanted to fight, you know, fighters from other countries, other, you know, ethnic groups, races, definitely Latin fighters, because they, you know, their fan bases, you know, definitely from the UK, because those fan bases. So from marketability standpoint, do you think there's any context there, or do you think it was just within that moment at that time, like Paul said about Munguia, and it has nothing to do with now because the game has changed so much?
No, I actually think, as far as marketability, I think that would have been a very marketable fight, the Munguia fight. Of course, he would have gotten so much criticism from the hardcores for even entertaining a fight like that versus Munguia. This is why it makes it so ironic that that boxing fans would complain about Canelo saying this, because you know what I mean. What I was thinking right away when Canelo was saying, "Hey, I don't want to fight Mexicans," is like, dude, is Canelo really going to tell these people that a fight versus Munguia would be an absolute joke for his legacy? You know, what is he allowed to say that on TV? You know what I mean? He's got to keep it professional and not say stuff like that. So, as far as marketability, I think that it would have been a really easy fight to sell to the, to the casuals. So, on that one, I don't know.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, I just like looking at the different perspectives, and it's crazy how things almost become take a life of their own and become urban legends. So that's one thing that when people are downplaying or trying to water down what Canelo is doing, that gets brought up, and it always kind of strikes me. So that's definitely why I wanted to bring it up, and I love hearing the thoughts, and I definitely love the insight and the passion for Chicano, man. Chicano's over there getting fired up, man. So.
Well, here's the thing, bro. Like, I'll tell you, it's just the truth, man. Like, it's just like it's just weird to me, especially when I hear it from like a Mexican. I'm just kind of like, I mean, I don't know. I mean, we're allowed to view things differently, but if you think Benavidez is going to be the guy to take Canelo, then just state it. Like, to me, there's no reason you can't break down this fight ahead of time. I did. If you know the sweet science, like, tell me what you think. If you don't think that Benavidez can beat Canelo, and he hasn't necessarily done anything to be in the front of the line, and Canelo has just gone undisputed, you should really be able to do whatever he wants. Like I said, like, this keeps showing up at our doorstep. So I'm glad you wanted to bring it up, Sean, because to me, it's really bizarre. And as far as like the marketability goes, like, I think it could be a good fight. But like I said, like, if you're a Mexican boxing fan, unless you're a hater, but even if you're a hater, bro, like, I can't think of like haters who don't watch Canelo. Everybody watches Canelo. Just like if you were like, I don't know, a Mayweather hater or a Pacquiao hater. Like, I can't think of, when they were in their prime, I can't think of any of their fights, whether I was hating or not, that I didn't make time to see and enjoy. You know what I mean? So it's bizarre to me to think that there's actually like a hardcore boxing fan, that would think that like it's going to do like much bigger business. Like, well, you're going to watch Canelo fight anyways. Like, to me, I don't think that, I mean, there might be a little bit more, maybe just a little bit more, but I think it would be maybe slightly like, okay, Canelo versus Benavidez would do maybe slightly more than Canelo versus Plant. Like, I think Canelo already brings the whole base. He's the pay-per-view fighter. He's the casual guy. Like, a lot of casual people, I mean, that's what makes Canelo the cash cow. The hardcores like him, the Mexicans like him, and the casuals like him. Okay. Like, Benavidez is, I mean, the Mexicans might like him, but like I said, you're going to split them. And then afterwards, Benavidez could very well be damaged goods. Like, where does he go from there? Like, if Canelo goes and knocks this dude out, right? Well, he's done hiding at 168, so he'll have to move up to 175, but it's like, he doesn't even want any business with anybody at 175, So, like I said, like, the more they keep chirping up for the fight at 168, like, I just think it looks kind of sad. And to me, like, I heard a quote from David Benavidez Sr. before we came on, and he said, hey, we want that fight. Nobody wants to see the Makabu fight. And I do want to see the Benavidez fight. I would get satisfaction out of it, but I would get satisfaction out of a Charlo fight, an Andrade fight, a Better B fight, a Bivol fight. Like, I would like to see a lot of these fights. So the clamoring, like I said, I think we just have to understand that, when you're the, one of the faces of boxing or the cash cow, haters come with the territory. You know what I mean? And like, they're still complaining, but there's nothing you could do about it. Like I said, I'm going to take this next year and stop. Well, I've already kind of done it. Like, I'm just isolating myself from a lot of like hate watching. And I think that's a very American thing where we go and watch channels and they say shit and we're like, oh, can't believe you said that, and like, we're going to respond. Like, I'm done with that. Like, there's a few channels that I really like that say shit that I don't like that I will stick to. But otherwise, man, I'm shedding all that. I don't have time to hear it. That's why I like the British fan base. Like, they don't have time for all that pendejadas. They just listen to what they like. They're proper. You know what I mean? And if they don't like what they're hearing, they'll leave. Filipino fans are like that too, man. Like, I noticed that, like, when people are talking shit unnecessarily, like, they're just gone. They don't have time to listen to all that crap. And you know what? I don't have time for it either.
No, I hear you, brother. But I definitely had time to hear your points and perspective. And thank you guys so much, because you're right, man. There's a lot of different narratives out there. And this is one that just kind of got under my skin because it didn't really make sense. But you guys made sense. So appreciate it.
Thanks, man. And it's nice that, we have you, to help keep us honest. Because, I guess everybody has certain biases. Yeah. But from the outside looking in, like, this one to me has never made any sense. And like I said, like, there's no beacons or anybody to take seriously that you think, oh, yeah, I'm going to rally with these content creators because they're with Benavidez. It's like the ones that want the Benavidez Canelo fight. Like I said, most of them are just trying to put Benavidez there in place to spare their fighter because they're talking all that mess. You know what I mean? But like I said, dude, I'm over it, man. I'm gonna enjoy what Canelo does next. And hey, dude, it's the off season, so we're gonna have more Canelo coverage, as you all know, as the time moves forward. And now we're gonna get into one of my favorite segments. Actually, it's one of everybody's favorite segments. We're gonna get into the rescore here. We had listed this one as something we were gonna do last week, but our show with Cody Crowley, shout out to Cody Crowley, went a little bit long, so we're gonna get into the Valuev versus Holyfield rescore. And I'm excited to get into this one, man. Like this was, I'm kind of excited in a way. So we're going to talk about it, and Run PMC has a breakdown as always. Run, please take it away.
Alrighty. So this was I've never seen this fight before. It was in 2008, and I wasn't really following heavyweight boxing at the time because really, at least for me, post Mike Tyson, like one of the first I'm a little younger, but one of the first boxing matches I remember watching was when Mike Tyson knocked out Clifford Etienne. And so this fight, like everything post Tyson for me, at least for the heavyweight division, I wasn't really that interested. So it was really good to just sort of look back in this, watch the fight, and go through it. But this fight took place on December 12th, 2008 at the Hallenstadion. It's actually a music venue and was in Switzerland. And this was for the WBA Heavyweight Championship of the world. And this was actually Valuev's second reign as the WBA belt holder. And this, for Evander Holyfield being 46 years old at this time, he was already a 4-time heavyweight champion. He was going for going for the fifth time heavyweight champion in this fight, which we'll get into it, but I think he should have got it. But and it's funny, just looking back through Nikhil Valuev's career, is that actually this belt was the belt that David Haye won for his reign, or brief reign, in the heavyweight division. So we could blame the 3 judges for the whole toe incident after the Klitschko fight, because who knows what it would have been if it would have went vacant and Haye didn't fight Valuev and retire him in the next fight. But this fight was, I believe this was a pay-per-view as well, just so it could be, I don't assume it was an expensive pay-per-view, but Al Bernstein and Hall of Fame Nick Charles were on the call from Zurich, Switzerland. Some key notes to think about would be Evander Holyfield being 46 would have been the oldest champion ever in the heavyweight division, just a little bit older than George Foreman when he knocked out Michael Moore. Who George Foreman was 45. So Holyfield, in my opinion, should be the oldest heavyweight champion ever. And then Holyfield's weight for this fight was actually 214. So he'd technically be a bridger weight in modern boxing. And then Nikhil Valuev was incredibly 310 pounds for this fight. So if there ever was a case for like a super heavyweight division, this would be the case. When someone's weighing close to 100 pounds more than you, especially in a combat sport like boxing, that is a little absurd. But for the sake of boxing history, I think we should just keep the heavyweights for what it is. But that's all I really have for the breakdown. But no, Paul, how'd you end up scoring this one?
Man, you know what? This fight right here, I didn't see Valuev absolutely do anything. I think I gave him the round 6 and 7. And the rest I had it for Holyfield. So I definitely had this fight a robbery. You know, I had Valuev winning 2 rounds.
Damn. Very exciting breakdown, Nopal. But you know what? That's about the story of the fight anyways, I'll tell you.
You know what, man? I wanted to add something. You know, in this particular fight, my opinion here was like, I don't understand how the judges had, one guy had it a draw. You know, the other guy had it 115, 114 to Valuev, and then the other judge had it 116, 112. Like, I got a bigger argument to just say that what's his name won every single round more than these guys. And, you know, and they wouldn't call my opinion a robbery. I don't think so, you know?
You know, it's funny. I think Dan Raphael said that exact same quote that, if I'm understanding you right, that he said you can make a bigger argument that Holyfield won every single round over Valuev winning that fight. And so let me tell you guys what I had. I had Holyfield beating Valuev 8-4. You know, I thought this fight was a terrible fight to watch. It might be like, as far as like a championship fight, as far as like the males go, probably the worst fight I've ever seen. Like, it was boring. I did think that the tone of the fight, I think the commentary was a little bit biased in my opinion. Like, there were times where Holyfield was just dancing around and not engaging. And then I would hear Al Bernstein say something like, oh, well, you know, Valuev simply doesn't want to fight. I'm like, well, he's the guy who's trying to slowly lurch forward. it was such an ugly fight, man. Watching this thing, like, and I don't think that Holyfield did himself any favors. Like I said, I think that Holyfield did win this fight 8-4, but there were so many lulls, and like I think he had the advantage to do things at certain times, and he didn't take advantage. For instance, like when Holyfield went into the inside of Valuev, he was very effective, and Valuev would just kind of lazily like throw his forearms on Holyfield's head, on his body, and it's like, dude, you could have been ripping that body so easy. It's not like Valuev had the strength, you know what I'm saying? Like he should have went on the inside a little bit more, in my opinion. So I did give Valuev rounds 3, 7, 9, and 12. But to me, this fight was like they were both so inactive that, I mean, I think you could make the argument the other way for a few rounds. I would say that you could give Valuev, and this is just my opinion, round 1, round 5, round 6, and round 11. Like there wasn't much to score off of. And Al Bernstein made the statement that, hey, well, Holyfield is doing just enough to win these rounds. Well, in my opinion, if you're doing just enough, that means it's a close round. It doesn't mean that you did a lot. It means that you barely won the round. If you barely won the round, it could be up to interpretation, and what you like. And to me, this was just a horrible fight. Like, it's not worthy of a championship fight. Holyfield could have had like a Rocky Balboa, the movie itself, Rocky Balboa. He could have had that moment, but with a real title. Okay, I mean, it was there for the taking. His corner was telling him he was winning the fight, and I had him winning the fight. But, you're in neutral ground. You're in Europe. It's kind of a showcase fight in a way. Like, you didn't deserve this heavyweight title fight. For better or worse, Valuev was the champion in his second reign. And I feel like Holyfield should have done a bit more. So I had Holyfield winning 8-4. But if you ask me, I did not classify it as a robbery. But I'd be more than happy to see you guys tilt it the other way towards a robbery. But that's just how I feel about it. You guys know how I feel about my formula. Like, if a guy's fighting negatively, like, he's got to do enough to offset the fact that he's been retreating a lot and the actual work that the opponent did as well. So Holyfield did do that, but like I said, like, there was very little to go off of in general in this fight. Like, it was a terrible fight to watch. I will never watch that fight again, I'll tell you that. Sean, what'd you think, man?
Hey, what's up? Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now, brother.
All right. Yeah, man. The fight was definitely not fight of the year, fight of the anything. And I kept telling myself, like, man, this is a championship fight. I can't believe the WBA sanctioned this fight. It's crazy. But it is history. So definitely, definitely something that you gotta, appreciate from that perspective. Valuev was just sluggish and like the opposite of athleticism. Whatever you think an athlete should look like and be like in the ring is the opposite of what he was. He just had like an 8,000 inch reach, and he used it and trying to get that jab out there, but it was slow, like you said. Chicano, man, like they had a lot of opportunities where Holyfield could have got in on him, but he didn't. And I scored it 8-4. I gave Valuev 6, 7, 8, and 12. But it just because there was so much inactivity, it wasn't like Holyfield didn't seize the moment. He just did more. So he definitely won, and but it wasn't like he didn't really have his Rocky moment. He just won the fight and didn't get the nod.
Okay, so would you classify this one as a robbery?
All right, so man, I was robbed of my life this week, like we all were watching it, but no, it wasn't a robbery. On the Gringo meter, it was 8-4, so not quite. There was close enough rounds where even Valuev was a brutal sleeping giant in the ring. He did win some rounds, and so it's not a robbery by definition. It's a horrible score, but it wasn't a robbery.
All right, so we have 2 for not a robbery. Here's what we're going to do, Run. It's up to you, man, if we classify this as a robbery. I say if 50% of the Al Chile panel goes with robbery, then that's what we're going to classify it as. You know what I mean? And so I'm very curious to see what you have to say. I tend to know how you score, I think, but I want to know what you have to say, man. Bro, how'd you score this fight?
All right. This was a tough one to watch. I mean, we were supposed to do it last week, and I wasn't able to make the our show, and then we did the Cody Crawley interview. And then I didn't watch this till last night because I was dreading sort of watching this fight.
Wow.
But I scored this one. I scored it 10-2 for Holyfield. And so I would classify this as a robbery, and I'll tell you why. Is because, yes, when the rounds were close in some of the rounds, but in some rounds, I would like to see the punch stats on this because I don't think Value have landed like any punches in some of the rounds. And Holyfield would land with these cuffing shots or these little jabs or jabs to the body. And I guess you just have to score what it is. And I think naturally when you score a fight, especially like this, Evander Holyfield, in my opinion, for the most of the fight, at least the first half of the fight, but sort of towards the end as well, he was the one doing a lot of the moving. But at the same time, in my opinion, he was sort of the ring general as well, which you usually don't see that type of thing. He was doing the most moving, was the ring general, and for the most part, I think landed the cleaner punches. Some of them he was jumping off, both feet were off the ground because Valuable was just so tall. And I just thought he just, even though a lot of the rounds were close rounds, but it was like Holyfield would land 5 punches, and maybe one of them was like a totally clean punch, but Valuev would land like 1 or 0 punches, and he wouldn't even get close to Holyfield. And it's like I don't know what you classify defense as, if he's totally on the outside or like mid range, or if he's just, because Valuev was missing punches. Like there was one he threw a jab, and Holyfield was already like on his side when the jab like finally got off. And it's like, I know like on HCP, specifically D-Style makes fun of like Joe Joyce, but Joe Joyce would have looked like freaking Gary Russell compared to Value of speed. Like it was just Joe Joyce, like it was unreal for me to watch this fight. I'm like, it looked like it was like a circus fight, if you will. Like you have the old champion going against like the big, like Bigfoot or someone in the ring. But it was, I mean, it happened. It was good to hear Nick Charles on the call again with Al Bernstein. I remember them on Showbox when they first started that series. And I mean, Nick Charles unfortunately has passed away from cancer, but it was just, I don't know. Obviously, I think there was a little bit biased towards Holyfield, but man, like it was hard for me to give value of rounds, and I gave him the 7th and 8th. Clearly, 7th and 8th, I wouldn't say they're close because all the rounds are sort of, like we said, close. But I would classify this as a robbery. Like, I don't know how you get when you have the closest judge being a draw in this type of fight. In no way, because like I know like Sean has his meter about how it's like 8-4 isn't really a robbery. Like I agree with that to a point, because I know some rounds where it's like where I thought I didn't think Canelo Lara was a robbery, but I was pretty set on my 8-4 scorecard. Like I couldn't really waver on the rounds that I gave. I wouldn't consider a robbery, but I wouldn't say just because it was 8-4, it was close, if that makes any sense. But there are some 8-4 that are back and forth. That's like, it could have been this way very easily. But this one, I think clearly, in my opinion, I could see 8-4, but anyway I would score it a robbery.
All right. We are classifying this one as a robbery. Very good, man. You know, it's good that we do these, and that's one of the reasons we go back. I mean, but do you feel any type of like outrage about it? I mean, this would have been a historical win. I mean, so what do you think? Is anybody who thinks this is a robbery, like, are you outraged at all? Like, how do you feel about it?
No, it does raise a discussion. I know I mentioned you guys off in the chat, and I, you know, as far as which one, if he would have won, you know, woulda, coulda, shoulda, but would this have been a more impressive victory? I mean, because he's fighting a literal giant. You know, there's 100-pound weight difference. I mean, granted, he can't crack an egg, but still, I mean, just physically, and then he's 46. So would this have been more impressive victory than Foreman versus Moore? That was the only thing that was raised for me, you know, once I woke up.
That I don't think so in a way, dude. Like I've never seen such a poor. And here's the thing: like I watched some of Valuev's fights. Like, you know, I have this weird thing where I like watching John Ruiz and Norman Stone work together. You know, I've sat through the Holyfield fights. I sat through the first Valuev fight with John Ruiz, which was considered to be a robbery, and that made Norman Stone retire. Right. So when John Ruiz fought him again, Norman Stone was not in that corner. So, you know, I had a good angle on Valuev leading up to this fight. And dude, like, I have never seen such a poor performance. I mean, he wasn't good before, but like this was just like a pathetic display of what a heavyweight champion is. Like I couldn't believe it when I was watching it. In fact, like if you had to ask me, bro, like, I mean, I would say Canelo could go in there and beat that version of Valuev easy. I would put down some money, like straight up. If I got even money on a bet, like, dude, Canelo would have wrecked that dude to the body. Like this guy had no strength, no energy, no pop. he was just like a big giant. He kind of reminded me of that one dude Undertaker fought, Giant Gonzalez in that hairy bodysuit. It's just like a just disgusting display. So I'm not really outraged about it. Like I said, Holyfield could have taken more advantage. Like, he should have went in there and tried to take it from the champ, and he didn't, and he paid the price. It was a robbery. Let's classify it as a robbery, but like, I'm not going to sit here and cry and be like, oh, and Holyfield is an all-time great, definitely an all-time great, but he should have done a little bit more, in my opinion.
No, I mean, like I said before, not to sound like a broken record, it was a opportunity that wasn't seized, right? So he could have been a 5-time champion. He could have been the oldest champion. Then wow, look at that. Even though he was fighting a real life human slug, but he didn't. He didn't. It was just it's not outrage. It's just severe disappointment and a really boring fight.
Yeah, I agree. I wouldn't be. I mean, I don't watch it live, but I wouldn't have been totally outraged just because it was a bad fight. But Holyfield, in my opinion, deserved the win, which sucks that he didn't get it. He probably would have lost to David Haye in the next fight, but that still doesn't mean he doesn't deserve the win at the time. And man, like seeing this guy, it's like I feel like a lot of heavyweights now, because they're not in shape, or they're getting more in shape now, but like when you had like Chris Arreola at his like top weight, when you see guys like that, it's like, man, Chris Arreola, if this guy Valuev was a champion, Chris Arreola definitely deserved to be a champion. If this is the standard of like the WBA, the oldest sanctioning body, as their heavyweight champion, so like you could look at it as like the top of the top, because the heavyweight champion's the top, the WBA was the first, and like most quote unquote history. But it's like, if this guy deserved it, then Chris Arreola, or like even like, I wonder if like guys like Chaz Witherspoon or Seth Mitchell, how they would have done against Valuev, because it was probably the worst fight I've watched. Like people, sorry.
No, I 100%. I didn't mean to cut off your thought. I really thought I was watching it the whole time. I was like, I need to literally watch this man's whole career, because it was so bad. It's like I need to go back and watch all his fights and see how he got to this point. It was like mesmerizing. Like, I know you said you had a bad performance, but this was like pathetic. Like forget that he didn't train. Like it's like he didn't care either. It was really peculiar. And then also another thing I want to add too is at the time the WBA had Holyfield ranked 13. Now we weren't outraged. We were outraged by how lack of action. But the WBA claimed that they were going to do an investigation on the judges, and they did not. They said they were going to rescore it. I guess they should have called us. Unless they count this, we could send this to the WBA and they can get overturned. How about that? That would put us on the map. Shout out to our Chile.
Yeah. I don't even know how that even works though, because they said they were going to rescore like the I don't know if it wasn't the WBA, because the WBO in both cases I'm going to talk about. The WBO said they're going to rescore the Bradley Pacquiao fight. Who has not precedent, but whose jurisdiction is it to overturn scores? Like, is it I don't know if it's the athletic commission, because they supply the judges, or does the sanctioning body reign supreme? Because if the sanctioning body reigns supreme, then like they said, the WBO said they would do that in the Horn Pacquiao fight, which I think Horn won that fight because he just bullied Pacquiao, and I just don't. But whose jurisdiction is it? Because the sanctioning body sanctions the fight for their belt, but clearly they don't have jurisdiction, as you saw with the drug testing or just allowing Oscar Valdez to fight. Clearly they don't really have the power. It's more of just a farce at this point for belts. So
yeah. I don't think they've ever done that on a high profile fight like that. I think they've only managed to do that, to review the scoring and to change the outcome on one of them low level fights. That's when they feel all outraged. But a fight as obvious as this, they sometimes say they are, but they never even do it, because you know what? A fight like this involves some pretty high level judges. You know what I mean? And in order to go back and change all these rescores, now this has to do with these judges' future, because will they ever let them rescore a fight? No, because it's obvious that, somebody took a dive.
Oh yeah, man! Somebody got taken out to Denny's, got a grand slam breakfast. Right?
Denny's, yeah. But to get back to your question, Sean, on paper, I think this would have been a bigger accomplishment for Holyfield to like on paper, if someone that has no idea about boxing and the history of boxing, if they were to see Holyfield wins this fight, a 46-year-old is the oldest champion and is a 5-time world champion or heavyweight champion, they'd be like, oh wow, that's a bigger accomplishment than this guy George Foreman. But just knowing what Foreman went through and his road back to it, and having basically a prime Michael Moore, I believe he fought Holyfield like the direct fight before this, or 2 fights before he fought Foreman. But seeing just how Foreman came back, and it was directly before. It's like and the way he knocked him out just with the simple 1-2, like hit him with the 1-2, Moore sort of stands there again, hits him again, and that's it. And so no way, like that's one of, in my opinion, one of the most iconic moments in boxing with Foreman. Then he's wearing like the same trunks he was wearing when he lost to Ali. And it's just that's more of it's romanticizing boxing. But for this fight, it was like on a closed circuit-ish type pay-per-view in Switzerland. But on paper, I would say this would have been a bigger accomplishment. But for a boxing fan or even just a sports fan at the time, I think the Foreman-Moore fight is a bigger accomplishment.
Great point.
Yeah, and to kind of add to what you were saying is like, as far as like what I remember, like as far as like how this dude had his second reign, like, dude, let's not forget, man, like it's easy to forget that the heavyweight division was crap for a long time, and I know that the belts got consolidated with the Klitschko's after this. So, it goes to Hay and then it goes to Vladimir, right? And then the Klitschko's were just kind of keeping things honest for a long time. But like, that's why, like, when people talk about those older fighters, like, I just don't respect them that much. Like when I hear about like, the Chisoras or the Pulevs, I'm like, what, or the, what's that guy? I forget. But if you fought any of those Klitschko's, like if you already got put in your place, you know what I mean? Like, I don't really consider, or Areola, like, I don't consider you to be that relevant in this era. Like, if you were like the next guy to see, you were able to get a title shot back in the day. It's not like there was like these people that were hiding. Like, I think that Tyson Fury got that Klitschko fight at the right time. Like, they saw everybody, So, I mean, we were coming out of a really weak era, in my opinion. And that's all I got to say about it. Like, it was just a terrible era for heavyweight boxing. People forget about it, but man, the odds for a lot of those fights, like the Klitschko fights, were so wide. And that was before like odds started getting crazy wide in general. Like, I think odds are a little bit wider now than they used to be. But man, like, I'm just so glad we're out of that era.
No, that's a great point, brother. Like, I was kind of going on my whole nostalgia thing. We talked about Christmas and what fights we go to as far as our fights that we like to rewatch, and reminiscing about how fights were made. Hey, the heavyweight division was a total shit show back then, man. Like, it was horrible, and that fight that we rescored definitely personified it. Major disappointment. It is a robbery, but I'm not outraged. I mean, I'm not outraged at all. I feel pretty good.
Good, man. Well, we should be feeling good this season. So thank you all so much for doing this. And I appreciate it. Like, it was the hard work. It might be the hardest work we have to do as far as controversial rescoring goes. Like, I don't think there will be a worse fight. And so now we're going to discuss what we're going to do next. And hey, you know what? One of the great things about having this segment is, like, we're going to have some good boxing to look forward to, as there's a little bit of a lull, and I'm looking forward to scoring some of these fights. So Sean, I'd like you to pick next. I have a little list I can read off for you, man. You let me know what you want. And not everything that's available is something that I'm going to list, because I have some that I think are going to be well timed, right? And we're going to do those later as it comes up. You know what I mean? So we could take a look at some of these and tell me what you think, man. All right. So we could do Martinez versus Cintron, Whitaker versus Jose Luis Ramirez, De La Hoya versus Sturm, James Toney versus Dave Tiberi, Pacquiao Horn, Pacquiao versus Marquez 1 and 2, Lupe Pintor versus Carlos Zarate, Joel Casamayor versus Jose Armando Santa Cruz, Foreman versus Briggs, Martinez versus Martin Murray, and then Ali versus Norton 3, and Ali versus Jimmy Young.
Damn, that's a great list, man. I'm gonna go ahead and say Pacquiao 1 and 2, man. Let's do it.
All right, you want to do them both or just one?
Both.
All right, man. I'm down, bro. We got time.
Don't cheat yourself. Treat yourself, man. For the 2022, you know.
Yeah.
I love it, man, and I appreciate it. We're gonna do Pacquiao versus Marquez 1 and 2. All right, man. So we got it. All right. Does anybody have anything else to add before we wrap this one up?
Just great to be back with y'all, man. It's been a pleasure, and thanks for everybody that tuned in. These guys are doing great things, and it's hard to talk boxing with them. Much love to the chat. Hey, shout out to D Style saying that we want to survive. Watching that fight. I'm still here, baby. Not going.
Hey, man, I echo those same sentiments, dude. Thank you all so much for tuning in. It's great to have you guys back and to be with the Al Chile crew. So for the Al Chile crew, this is the Chicano Prophet signing off. Peace.